A Beastly Comedy, Canto 1.11. Extracting needed nutrients in cold fluorescent light, the fungi with bacteria or algae had been wed, as symbionts consuming rock to flourish at this site, surviving where the spruces or the mosses cannot spread. The lichen grew extremely fast, devoured by passing snails, as big as seals or slimy hares, in humid darkness bred, while others, feeding on the dead, were leaving mucus trails. Starvation made me taste the slime, the manna made of blood, and flakes upon a boulder like a reptile shedding scales. Enveloped by mephitic smoke, I heard a muted thud. My nose against the earth I felt a ripple of the pain, increasing as I smoked to smell the traces in the mud. Ingesting sludge before I fell like plasma from a vein, I seemed to have vampiric teeth, my stomach full at last, and dreaming of a rainy heath or sunlight on the plain, forgot the dark intestine in my visions of the past. The hunger may be sated, but no fragrant field I saw. Instead, a slug upon my leg, I screamed again, aghast, as Dante kicked the creatures that were crawling on the floor. "Too many!" he exclaimed, irate, ungracious in defeat, against the fierce invertebrates, my legs a scene of war. Foragules had lances that were scraping at my feet, dentition on the thorny tongues, exciting to perceive, but horror since my skin became a luscious leaf to eat. A moving pebble, nay, an ant, was creeping up my sleeve. Malicious minds and vicious wills, awakened as if stone, was growing pincers, legs deformed, a pilgrim's call to cleave, devour the maggot in my brain, and burrow through the bone. "Retreat! You shall not tunnels make, not while I have a friend, who may be stern, but would not leave his foolish ward alone." They had no ears to hear commands, no voices to offend, and I was but material for colonies maintained by instinct, not a code of law on which the thrones depend. Beneath my hands the gravel by my visit essence stained. The bleeding had revealed a mind unstable and afraid. The clay with crimson clots imbrued, unmoving I remained, although the guide, heroic stayed, had hurried to my aid. The beads of sweat bedewed my face, and yet I had to rise, to fight with Dante even with no hatchet nor a blade. He must have seen me falling down, compassion in his eyes, but had to drive away the mouths approaching us apace. No time to stop, respond to cries, preventing my demise. I feared the creatures like the gods, the vile, immortal race that takes the face of shadows, and the wonders uncontrolled, when targets we appear to be, whom hungry vermin chase. For conscious of fragility, no longer being bold, we try to keep our dignity, inventing plans divine, as though created deities and faith to comfort cold, or stories of a destiny revealed a grand design. Thus weaker than a swarm of ants, but hanging on to pride, the victors I regarded as the masters in this mine, as if by godly might alone could humans be defied. "We have to run," the poet cried, "toward the passage dark, until in soapy chambers we can find a place to hide." He grabbed a stick, a bone, and made a sweeping arc, without tormenting hungry snails, but driving them away. How often our defensive deeds have left an ugly mark, the cities ravaged, gardens bombed, our rancor on display, because a country is portrayed a nuisance or a threat. But Dante would not beetles crush, nor mutants mammals flay, protecting his repentant child in tunnels of regret. I dashed to safety, rooms unlit, retreating, banged my head. By pain was forced to silent sit, awaiting him in sweat. Have I achieved the final rest, arriving with the dead, to listen to the scuttling in the palace with no light, observing these illusions in the blackness glowing red, expecting every sound to be a signal for a fight, the insects that arrive in swarms to chew on my remains, or then my saviour with a lamp to slay the growling night. Effulgent comets, traces bright, inhabit finer brains, but all the perils in my mind, advancing like a fire, I only saw a conflict and the vicious wild campaigns. For darkness may delusions both of friends or fiends inspire, destruction or delight perceived, depending on our mood. The tunnel wheezing with the wind, I heard a stony choir. Then light, the poet panting close, my confidence renewed. Regrouping, gasping, clasping arms, a shelter we had found, by grasping how defenceless are the lonely bards pursued, who taste without a friend a gift emerging from the ground. The creatures did not follow us, together we were brave, although I tried to be aware and sit without a sound. Why did you eat the lichen grey, the foulest fungus crave? The food is for the lawyers and the thieves turned into snails, who let desire decide the way a seeker should behave. We search for Lady Justice with a balance in her scales, although the weights unmeasured stay and bases are askew. Believing that successful life mendacity entails, they prided on inventing facts and evidence untrue, as if the truth depended on perspectives, nothing more, the legal system ancient but the circumstances new. For some have learned judicial art to cultivate rapport, contributing to culture kind, with citizens sincere, while others close to bandits found the loopholes in the law, and hungry for prestige or wealth made certitude unclear. The lichens and the fungus have evolved to faster grow, for when they on the boulder spread, molluscan thieves appear, competing for resources here, the slugs no longer slow. My body was a calcite shell, from which a voice replied, I thought the food was safe to eat, because you told me so, a little while ago before we demons had espied. I tasted of the rotten fruit, the pulp and juice corrupt, consumed by lonely lawyers who are starving in their pride. The texture of a flaking night, the slime I rashly supped, was like a rock against the skull. Unconscious I became, adrift upon the sea of dreams where endings are abrupt. Solicitors and barristers yet play the prodding game, according to procedures that produce a sable state. So should we not extol the lot, attorneys kind proclaim? And why did ants explore the cave and scamper on the slate, intent on making tunnels, since my cause could be their nest, while prostrate I was lying, with no worry and no hate? The poet squirmed as if he nursed a viper on his breast, embarrassed by the bad advice he offered me, his ward, and blushing like the poisoned queen, defeated and depressed, who did not want to recognize Augustus as her lord. The Tuscan asp admitted how imperfect were his views. Forgive me for the guidance that is human, ergo flawed. I had forgotten robbers eat the bread they cannot choose, digesting caustic slime and sludge, the lichen less divine than deeper in the caverns where immortals get their dues. Too common are the tainted tongues that tasted tender wine, but now the palate has decayed, the flesh corrupted dies. Subsistence unrequired they yet are starving in this mine. The judges must interpret laws and make the rulings wise, since parliaments discuss decrees but cannot make them tight, while jurisprudence influence perspectives with their lies. So they who have misled the court and made maroon look white, compassion for the crooks displayed, affected mercy feigned, deceivers in their need devour the slime without delight. And ants, the bloody bureaucrats who secretly have reigned, with rules to twist and laws to bend as gaps support their norms, the prudence of a doubted phrase by wailing wind explained. They insects and the poor respect, if ordered are their swarms, command the gravel to be clean and flowers to be neat, insist possessions are not yours unless you fill in forms. But fury does not truth reveal. Our judgment is conceit, established by the notion that as polished gabbles raised, we would not altered views adopt, the bias of the seed. Assassins are defended, but in fairness hardly praised, yet lawyers are required to show forgiveness is desired, for clemency depends on how our values have been phrased. The horrors in your mind appear in rotten flesh attired, but we must venture deeper to the anguish at your core, because you are the victim and the judge in pain bemired, unconscious of compassion and your moral rage at war.